Mirror of Halloween Night. The manor on the coastal cliffs of Oakhaven was, to most, a ruin. To John, it was an unwritten canvas. He was an antiquarian and a restorer, a man whose entire philosophy centered on the idea that every object possessed a single, true, perfect form, waiting to be freed from the decay of time. When he purchased the dilapidated estate in late October, just days before Halloween, he saw not the peeling wallpaper and the smell of damp rot, but the ghost of its former glory. John's obsession was not with history, but with perfection. The work began immediately, a frantic race against the cold. On the evening of October 31st, as the town below prepared for bonfires and costumes, John was deep in the manor's master study, prying off a false panel in the wall, half hidden behind a massive, crumbling oak bookcase. The space behind it was tight, suffocatingly dry, and held only one item, a mirror. It was impossibly heavy, framed in dark, tarnished silver that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. When John finally dragged it out, setting it against a wall streaked with damp, he stopped stunned. The glass was flawless. Not a speck of dust, not a scratch, not a hint of the usual age that clouded old mirrors. It was a sheet of pure, unblemished night. He held his lantern high and looked into it, expecting to see his own weary, dust-covered face. But the mirror showed no reflection of John. Instead, the glass showed the room exactly as it stood now, yet entirely different. The peeling wallpaper was crisp damask, the mildewed carpet was a plush Persian weave, and the shadows were banished by the warm, golden light of dozens of tapers burning in silver candelabras. The decaying oak desk was polished mahogany, covered in orderly stacks of leather-bound books. The mirror did not reflect the present, it reflected a perfect past. John ran a hand over the damp wall. In the mirror, the wall was dry, painted a rich burgundy. He moved a broken chair. In the mirror, the chair remained where it had been, whole and velvet upholstered. The revelation hit him with the force of a physical blow. He had found the Veritas mirror, a rumored artifact that showed the perfect, idealized state of whatever lay before it, frozen in a specific moment of time. John stayed up all night mesmerized. The reflection was not static, it was a memory in perpetual playback. As the moon passed the high window, the tapers in the mirror reflection flickered, and John realized the image was specifically keyed to Halloween night, exactly 1 year ago. The Veritas mirror became John's singular guide. He stopped relying on architectural drawings and archival photos. He had the perfect blueprint. Why waste time guessing, he rationalized. The mirror knows the original, true design. It shows the flawless state. He started with the study. He matched the rich burgundy paint, sourced period-correct damask wallpaper, and commissioned a flawless replica of the mahogany desk he saw in the reflection. It wasn't restoration, it was an act of worship. He was replacing the messy, lived-in reality with the mirror's pristine, unattainable ideal. As the physical room began to match the reflection, a terrible phenomenon occurred. The mirror's image became denser, more real. The air in the study, once merely cold and musty, now carried a phantom scent, a subtle perfume of cinnamon and old brandy emanating from the perfect, reflected past. The true horror began when the reflection moved. John was polishing a brass fixture, trying to achieve the exact golden sheen he saw in the glass. When he looked up, a figure stood near the reflected desk, a tall, elegant woman in a white silk gown. She was not a ghost. She was a detailed, perfect reflection of life, standing in the mirrored room, smiling gently as she reached for a reflected glass of wine. First came the children. A boy with a toy wooden soldier and a girl attempting to hide behind her mother's voluminous skirt. They were laughing, their reflected giggles just below the threshold of audibility, a phantom sound that tickled the edges of John's hearing. Then came the patriarch, Lord Hawthorne, a stern but smiling man who sat at the mahogany desk, reviewing papers with a contented expression. The mirror was not just showing a perfect room, it was showing a perfect family. They moved, they talked, they interacted, all unaware of the decay surrounding their flawless, contained reality. They were having a beautiful, perfect Halloween party. John's obsession deepened. morphing from architectural reverence to emotional voyeurism. He would spend hours watching them, comparing his lonely, dust-filled present to their vibrant, joyful, reflected past. His own life, his actual friends, his clients, all became irritating distractions from the true, beautiful reality he saw in the glass. The real world was too flawed, too unpredictable, too messy. Only the mirror offered the controlled, complete beauty he craved. John noticed a strange detail. While the reflected room and the people within it were flawless, the frame of the actual Veritas mirror was growing progressively more tarnished. The closer he got to achieving the physical perfection of the reflected room, the more agitated the reflected family became. One night, as John meticulously placed a newly restored silver tray on the mahogany desk, matching the reflected tray precisely, Lord Hawthorne in the mirror stopped smiling. He turned his head slightly, not toward John, but toward the corner of the reflected room, a flicker of dread crossing his perfect face. The children paused their game, their reflected laughter suddenly stifled. John dismissed it. It was simply part of the recording, a momentary dramatic shift in the party. He spent the next day, November 1st, exploring the rest of the ruined manor, searching for clues about the Hawthorns. He found a small, heavy box hidden in the library fireplace, untouched by time. Inside was a single, brittle, yellowed newspaper clipping dated 2 years prior and a small, gold-clasped diary. The newspaper clipping was the key. Local tragedy claims entire Hawthorne family in manor fire. Accident suspected. John's blood ran cold. The fire, the paper specified, had happened 1 year and 1 day ago, November 1st. Just after midnight. The chilling truth slammed into him. The mirror was not showing the house at its most perfect, but the house on its last night of life. The laughter, the pristine beauty, the sense of effortless perfection, it was all a gorgeous, fleeting illusion, a memory preserved just before it was violently extinguished. He had been worshipping a beautiful facade that hid an imminent, horrific death. He raced back to the study. It was now late afternoon on November 1st, the exact time the tragedy, 1 year ago, would have been discovered. John looked into the Veritas mirror, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The reflection was different. The golden light of the party was gone. The study in the reflection was choked with smoke, a billowing, ochre haze that obscured the perfect furniture. The tapers had fallen and shadows danced wildly. He could see Eliza, the beautiful wife, clutching her children, her reflected silk dress now singed at the hem. Lord Hawthorne was not at his desk, but standing near the false wall where the mirror had been hidden, his face a mask of terror. The mirror was now showing the moment of the disaster, exactly 1 year later to the minute. And then, Lord Hawthorne in the reflection did the impossible. He turned his head fully, ignoring the fire and the smoke, and looked directly out of the glass. His eyes, reflected clearly through the smoke, were not the happy, contented eyes of the perfect past, but eyes wide with agony and accusation. He raised his hand. You saw it. The reflected man's lips moved, silently, perfectly. You loved the perfection of our last night, but you ignored the truth of your own life. You were drawn to our death because you have not truly lived. The image flickered, and the corruption of a life violently ended. John stumbled back, finally seeing the lesson the mirror imparted. Perfection is static, and life is dynamic. To crave the flawless reflection is to crave the stillness of death. The Hawthorne family was perfect in that mirror because they could no longer change, grow, or make mistakes. They were preserved only as a tragedy. His own hands, covered in the real-world dust of his incomplete, flawed life, suddenly felt warm, vibrant, and alive. With a surge of self-preservation, John grabbed the nearest tool, a heavy, wrought-iron crowbar, and swung it with all his might against the Veritas mirror. The glass did not shatter with a crash, it imploded, sucking the beautiful reflected light, the scent of cinnamon, and the terrifying image of Lord Hawthorne's face inward, leaving behind only the cold, empty, heavily tarnished silver frame. John stared at the bare wall where the mirror had stood. The wall was damp, cracked, and thoroughly imperfect. He left the manor that night, closing the heavy, creaking front door behind him. He left the perfect, costly, incomplete restoration of the study. He walked away from the house, embracing the raw, unpredictable world outside. The memory of the flawless Hawthorne family, laughing in their last perfect moment, was imprinted forever in his mind, not as a blueprint for life, but as a chilling reminder that true value lies only in the messy, flawed, and living present. The mirror had offered perfection, but demanded life in return. John, finally, chose to live imperfectly. If you like the story, subscribe the channel and like the video. Thank you.